pencil. The pencil maker took the pencil outside just before putting him into the box. There are 5 things you need to know, he told the pencil, before I send you out into the world. Always remember them and never forget, and you will become the best pencil you can be. 1, you will be able to do many great things, but only if you allow yourself to be held in someone's hand. 2, you will experience a painful sharpening from time to time, but you need it to become a better pencil. 3, you will be able to correct any mistakes you might make. 4, the most important part of you will always be what's on inside. 5, on every surface you are used on, you must leave your mark. No matter what the condition, you must continue to write. Now, let's put ourselves, we don't become the pencil, okay? We don't become the pencil. 1, you will be able to do many great things, but only if you allow yourselves to be held in God's hand and allow other people to see what you have to offer. 2, you will experience a painful sharpening from time to time by going through various problems, but you need it to become a stronger person. 3, you will be able to correct any mistakes you might have. 4, the most important part of you will always be what's on the inside. 5, on every surface you walk through, you must leave your mark. No matter what the situation, you must continue to do your duties. Always remember them and never forget, and you will become the best person you can be. This morning, the most important part of you and me will always be what's on the inside. A few years ago, an individual by the name of Max Patterson did a survey, and the survey consisted of only one question. The question, why people do not want to do God's will. And let's keep in mind now, the most important part of man is what is on the inside. Reason number 1 on the survey was worldly pleasures. Worldly pleasures, we know, are immediate and blind people from seeing the spiritual blessings of God. Christianity does not fit the lifestyle of one to the one that is committed to worldly pursuits. Habits once formed are hard to break. When you choose a habit, you always choose the end results of that habit. People that responded to the survey mentioned many things that would lead one away from God, such as TV programs, movies, music, thirst for fame and fortune will lead many people away from God. But let's think about it. God gives us an answer for worldliness. Barry read it just a few minutes ago. Romans 12, verse 1 and 2. Present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your minds, that you may prove that is good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Worldliness leads many people away from God. The second reason on the survey was selfishness. Too often, People are wrapped up in themselves and have the me concept, or I want to do my own thing. I want to do my own will. This self will produce pride and make many unwilling to serve God. They will not be willing to live up their sins or their mistakes that they made. They won't confess them. A selfish person. Many feel self-sufficient and think that they no longer need God. When there's no real desire to do as one pleases, one does not wish to do God's will. In Romans 12, verse 3, I guess I should have let Barry read that for us too. But Paul gives this advice for us. For I say, through grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to live soberly, or to think soberly, according as God hath dealt to every man the measure of faith. Selfishness, we know, can lead people away from God. The third reason on the survey was indifference. Indifference. People just don't care. We know that. There's a lot of people, they don't care. And now I'm not talking about just religion. I mean, we know people don't care. A lot of people don't care about church, God, Christ. But a lot of things that just people don't care. Many today, we might say, are satisfied with the status quo. It is easier to conform and go along with the crowd traveling than the path of least resistance. Some do not attend worship service because they just don't feel the responsibility, the love for God. They do not hunger and thirst after righteousness. Jesus says, Matthew 5, verse 6, blessed are those that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Or blessed are those that have a sincere heart, willing, wanting to obey God. Jesus told us what he thought of the attitude of indifference in Revelation 3, verses 15 and 16. When Jesus says, I know that thou art neither hot or cold, I would spew thee, or hot or cold. So then, because thou art lukewarm and never cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. So, indifference can lead people away from God. The fourth reason, peer pressure. And I was thinking about this. A lot of times when we think about peer pressure, we think more towards younger folks. But peer pressure can hit us all. To some, it is more important to be a part of a proper group than to serve Jesus. While others are afraid, someone will make fun of them. When one loves the praises of men more than the praises of God, they may not have the courage to stand for what's right and be different from the world. Living for Jesus may seem foolish to some folks, maybe many folks, but we must have the courage to stand and to overcome and do what's right. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. I've heard it said, and it has been said, courage is holding on 5 minutes longer. Anyone can praise Jesus, but many times it takes courage to follow him. Fifth on the survey was unbelief. Unbelief. We must do God's will to go to heaven. We know that. And Jesus says in Matthew 7, verse 21, not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Hebrews 3, verse 12. Take heed, therefore, lest there be in any of you an evil heart of unbelief, in departing, forsaking them, or the living God. The sixth reason on the survey was lazy, just being lazy. It takes too much effort to be strong, or it takes more effort to be strong than just be easy to just conform with the world. It takes some effort. Some today, we might say, have the Huckleberry Finn philosophy. When Huck says, well then, what's the use of learning to do right when life's troubles to do right? It's trouble to do the right, and ain't no trouble to do wrong. So I reckon I won't bother no more about it. Always do what comes easy at the time. Too many people each for what they want, but will not scratch for it. We must not only each for, but we must scratch for heaven. The seventh reason on the survey was lack of understanding. Many do not know or realize the fatal consequences of failing to obey God's commands. They don't know. They haven't been taught. There's no way one can know what to do or get their priorities right if they never have been taught. People must be taught to love God and to obey God. We need not to overlook what Jesus says in Mark 16:15. Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Many would obey today. When we know this to be true, many would obey today if they were taught. So that's why we need to go out and teach. Follow Jesus' command, teach. The last reason on the list was inconvenience. And I thought about the inconvenience. Some do right only when it is convenient to do so. Many are comfortable and do not want to be disturbed. We know that. A lot of times we may fall, well, I'll just speak for self, may fall in that category. Don't want to be disturbed. They think that Christian standards are too confining and take up too much of time and take up too much of their free time and money. Inconvenience. We can think of many examples, personal examples, but we won't go into it. But one example that stands out, we find in Acts 24, verse 25, Felix. What did Felix say? Paul, in verse 25 of Acts 24, Paul was reasoning of righteousness, temperance, judgments to come to Felix, preaching to Felix. And the Bible states that Felix trembled and answered. And let's notice how he answered. He said, go thy way for this time. When I have a more convenient season, I will call for thee. Inconvenience. And it's sad that so many people today are not worshiping at all because they feel like it's inconvenient to them to get up and get ready to go worship God. So the question, or the statement, or we might say a question, what hinders people from serving God? Well, we stated a few this morning. Worldly pleasure, selfishness, indifference, peer pressure, unbelief, lazy, lack of understanding, inconvenience. We, you and I, can do many great things as we travel through life if we allow God to hold our hand. We must be like the pencil. We must have purpose in our heart to serve God. We must keep in mind the most important part of us is on the inside. So the question for us now is, how are you on the inside? How are we? Jesus says in Revelation 2, verse 10, "Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give you a crown of life." We must continue to do our duty, just like the pencil. We must keep doing our duty. Why? For we want to be the best Christian we can be. For we want to be the best example we can be. That's why it matters what's on the inside. If you're here today and feel the need to respond to heaven's invitation, I invite you to come as we stand and sing.